moment frozen in time. Imagine a place so sacred, so steeped in history, that for nearly 2,000 years, voices of worship there were silenced. No singing, no dancing, no prayers allowed. A place where generations of people longed for a connection, yet faced barriers of silence and restriction. That place is Jerusalem's Temple Mount, the holiest site in Judaism and a focal point of spiritual and political tension for centuries. But something extraordinary just happened. On June 29, 2024, the silence was broken. Not in secrecy or shadows, but boldly, openly, and out loud. Jewish worshippers stood on the ancient stones, singing, praying, rejoicing, protected, unhidden, unafraid. The world watched, but in a way unlike before. Quietly, almost reverently. This is not just a story about a shift in policy. It is a story about prophecy awakening, about history breathing new life, about ancient scrolls and sacred rituals stepping into the present. Before we dive deeper into this unfolding story, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. Join us as we explore these incredible events with clarity and calm, helping you understand what is happening and why it matters to so many around the world. The breaking of silence. Worship returns to the Temple Mount. For centuries, the Temple Mount stood as a silent sentinel over Jerusalem's faith and history. Jews and Christians, heirs to the sacred heritage, were forbidden to pray openly. Muslim worship was protected. Jewish worship was restricted to the point of near prohibition. The very act of prayer was a risk, fraught with tension and confrontation. Then, under the leadership of Israeli minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, everything changed. Jewish prayer groups began ascending the mount openly, Torah scrolls in hand, singing songs that echoed across the ancient stones. Police officers no longer enforced silence. They protected freedom. A centuries-old silence gave way to ancient psalms and newfound conviction. This wasn't a small political tweak, it was a spiritual earthquake. A place that had swallowed prayers in silence was now alive with sacred sound. Something long suppressed was awakening, not just in law but in purpose. A new chapter had begun. The red heifer, a sign from the past. As if this moment of worship were not enough, something else quietly emerged in Israel's hills. A calf unlike any other, a perfect red heifer. This is no ordinary animal but one that meets every ancient requirement laid out in the Torah. No blemish, no white hair, never burdened by labor. Everything that Scripture says is necessary for the purification ritual. The ashes of this red heifer are crucial. According to Jewish law, before the temple can be rebuilt and sacrifices can resume, the temple grounds must be purified using these ashes. For centuries, the absence of such an animal made the idea of rebuilding the temple seem impossible. Now, with this calf born, Ward has dramatically shifted. Together, the open worship on the mount and the perfect red heifer create a moment that many see as the fulfillment of prophecy. The stage is set, and the pieces are falling into place. The temple readiness, from vision to reality. For many, talk of rebuilding the third temple was once dismissed as distant or symbolic. But today it feels urgent and tangible. The Temple Institute has publicly displayed detailed blueprints of the temple, down to every cubit and chamber, designed in consultation with rabbis, architects, and scholars. More than the structure, sacred vessels, golden menorahs, silver trumpets, bronze lavers, have been carefully crafted. Even the priestly garments, woven exactly as Scripture demands, await their wearers. The priests themselves, descendants of the tribe of Levi, have been identified not only by tradition but through DNA testing. They have been trained for years in ancient rituals of sacrifice and purification. This is not a theory. It is preparation in the here and now. Adding to this incredible development, the Sanhedrin, the ancient ruling council, has been revived. 71 elders now meet openly, calling for the return of temple service. The final barrier, access to the Temple Mount for Jewish worship, has begun to fall. Prophecy and Scripture, the blueprint for what comes next. This story is more than history or politics. It is a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Scripture paints a vivid picture of end-times events centered around the temple. In Daniel 9, we read about a coming ruler, the Antichrist, who will make a covenant and later betray it, ending sacrifices and defiling the holy place with the abomination of desolation. Jesus himself warns in Matthew 24 to watch for this event. The temple must exist for these things to happen. John's vision in Revelation 11 tells us to expect a temple measured and worshippers present during the tribulation period. Without the temple, none of these milestones could come to pass. But now, the blueprints, the priests, the vessels, and access to the mount are all converging. The prophecies are no longer abstract. They are physical, visible, and measurable. The silence of the nations, a strange calm. Historically, any Jewish activity on the Temple Mount triggered immediate, fierce condemnation from global powers, UN resolutions, protests from Arab nations, fiery denunciations. Yet this time, there is an eerie silence. Countries like Jordan, Turkey, and Iran have remained muted. No urgent emergency meetings, no public outcry, no violent clashes. This silence is profound. It suggests a pause, a breath held before the next act in a divine drama. Scripture tells us that silence often precedes major moments of revelation. There was silence before creation, silence before Sinai, silence before the opening of the seventh seal. Could this stillness be the calm before the spiritual storm? History's pattern. God works in the storm. Why now? Why in these unstable times, when Israel faces constant threats, regional unrest, and global tension? History shows us that God often moves not in times of peace, but through chaos and upheaval. When Moses faced Pharaoh, Egypt was crumbling. When the Second Temple was rebuilt, Jerusalem was still a ruined city. Stability is not a prerequisite for divine action. Sometimes it is the shaking itself that makes way for the eternal. In this moment of global uncertainty, as wars loom and governments fracture, the foundations for something sacred are being laid. Worship is returning. Preparations for temple restoration are underway. The pieces are moving as if on a divine timetable. The urgency of readiness, a call to watch and prepare. This story is not a call to panic, but to readiness. The signs we have studied for years are now happening in real time. This is a wake-up call to stay spiritually awake, alert, and grounded in faith. Jesus said in Luke 21:28, "When these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near." Not when all is calm, not when the world feels safe, but when the shaking starts. This is a moment to pray, to watch, and to hold fast to truth, to share the message with family, neighbors, and friends, to be part of the story unfolding before our eyes. Looking ahead, what might come next? As worship continues on the mount, as the red heifer's ashes prepare for purification, and as the temple's vessels and priests stand ready, the question looms: what happens next? Will animal sacrifices be reinstituted as ancient law commands? Will the temple construction begin in earnest? How will the world respond? And beyond politics and ritual, could this convergence awaken millions spiritually? Could it be the spark for a global spiritual revival, or ignite unprecedented conflict? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: the countdown is no longer theoretical. We may well be the generation that witnesses the fulfillment of prophecy, the restoration of the temple, and the coming tribulation. Conclusion: be part of the story. This story is unfolding now, in headlines and whispers from Jerusalem's stones. It's a story of hope, challenge, and prophecy coming to life. We encourage you not to simply watch from the sidelines. Be ready. Stay spiritually alert. Hold fast to faith. Pray for peace in Jerusalem, for wisdom, for clarity, and for courage. Because when something this big is happening, it is not by chance. It is history moving toward eternity, and you are part of that story. Thank you for joining us in this journey. Stay with us for the next chapter, where we will explore the return